Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA 2025. Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading, and joining me now is Gavin Millard, VP of Product with Tenable. Gavin, thank you so much for dropping by the news desk.
Great to be here.
Appreciate you doing this. We are talking about closing the security gaps in a multi-cloud AI-driven world. Extremely timely.
Yeah.
With cloud environments getting more complex, talk about some of the most pressing threats that security professionals are up against.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest problems that people are facing today is the amount of data that they're gathering on security issues, right? So as you expand out your visibility, you expand out the bad things that you know as well. And so one of the things that we're really focusing on is helping prioritize and contextualize all these things to really tell me the 5 things that are going to cause me big problems today. So from an attack surface perspective, of course, we're seeing loads of different technologies deployed, AI, MCP, and all these different buzzwords. And it's important to keep on expanding out how much you're assessing, but then also deal with all of that information in a way that just still focuses on the things that are going to cause you problems.
Is that because there's more inputs? Is it because the cloud infrastructure has expanded?
Yeah, 100%. If you think about back when AWS first started, it had 5 services. There was hardly anything there. And now you've got so many services, half of which are really difficult to configure. So security issues are often added when they're deployed. And then of course you have things like identity. You have issues around overprivileged accounts. You've got loads of things that are exposed to the internet. In fact, our research says that 2 out of 5 containers within the cloud are actually exposed to the internet, and that leads to an increase in exposure and risk.
Well, let's talk a bit more about exposure. Why is an exposure management approach to managing cloud risk more effective than, say, the more traditional cloud security management measures?
Yeah, a great question. So, for me, CVSS, the common way of scoring how vulnerable something is or how critical the vulnerability is, kind of sucks, right? It's not really there to be able to tell you which vulnerabilities are going to be targeted by
It's
attackers.
A pretty crude instrument.
Yeah, it's more about, it's like using Myers-Briggs as a background check, right? It doesn't really tell you much, it just categorizes. It says, it is a remote code execution vulnerability, but no one's actually using it as remote code execution vulnerability because it's really hard to use. Whereas, the ability to be able to prioritize based on context is really foundational to exposure management. So with cloud exposure management, what we're doing is we're still gathering all the vulnerabilities and misconfigurations and identities and things, but we're prioritizing, contextualizing based on real threats, understanding the threats that are going to be targeted by attackers. And then also, with exposure management, it's really about mobilization as well, about fixing things. So tell me everything, prioritize and contextualize with threat and risk, and then also help me fix things better and faster.
Well, let's dig in there a little bit around prioritization. How is it that Tenable is able to really bring more granularity of prioritization, and how does it focus on the most urgent cloud security threats?
Yeah, so we've got the biggest database of threat information around CVEs and misconfigurations. Right? And we leverage AI to be able to go out there and get all the threat context that's there from public sources, but also private sources as well. And so as we gather all this information and we tag all the vulnerabilities and misconfiguration with this information, it gives you the ability to be able to ask really smart questions like, tell me the vulnerabilities that are actively being targeted by a threat actor for a ransomware campaign for English companies in finance. Right? And then you've gone from 270,000 vulnerabilities that have got a CVSS score, 56% by the way of which are critical or high in nature, down to a very, very focused group of vulnerabilities that you can actually deal with. Because you can't fix everything. You really need to fix the most risky things that a threat actor is going to leverage, and then you can get down to the more cyber hygiene things.
So we're talking really hyper-intelligent filtration, it sounds like.
Yeah. It's all about being able to look at the data set and say, these are the few things that I'm interested in. Tell me where I'm exposed within my environment, and then help me actually fix those problems.
In a related piece to that, say a bit about what customers should look for when they're selecting a cloud security provider to basically ensure long-term success and protection.
Yeah, so for me, when it comes to being able to address risk within the cloud, it's about awareness, like multi-cloud, being able to see all the different distinct services out there. It's about taking an exposure management approach rather than a vulnerability management approach. Like vulnerability management, it's so 1990s. Like the approach that we have today is far more effective. So it needs to have that view of threat. But one of the other areas that's very important is identity as well. A lot of cloud security focus more on the misconfiguration and the vulnerabilities, and less about identity. So it's really important that you have that identity aspect in there to contextualize which systems are most critical, but also to look for overprivileged accounts and be able to reduce that attack surface as well.
All right. Close us out, if you will, with some thoughts around Google's recent acquisition of Wiz, a cloud services vendor acquiring a cloud security vendor. It's an interesting pair up. What are your thoughts there?
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So I think what the problem is when a company that are providing services buys a company to secure their services, it really drives a refocus on the roadmap to instead of it being AWS and cloud and Azure and GCP, the features are probably going to be more GCP first. Like Google have bought them for a reason. There's a lot of value in being able to offer security services specific for GCP, but the problem is a lot of customers, they're using multi-cloud. They want the ability to be able to leverage Azure or leverage like AWS where it makes sense, or GCP where it makes sense. So like for a lot of customers that are using Wiz to secure the cloud, they're going to find that a lot of the features are going to be GCP first. Like GCP is going to be the favored feature.
Do you imagine Google will eat its own dog food, that they'll be using Wiz internally?
Oh yeah, I'd be amazed if they didn't, because they've spent a lot of money on it. So like, I think you're going to see an improvement in GCP security, which is great. It's a really, really good thing. I think it's it's a bit of a shame that like Wiz are going to lose a lot of their independence, but I do see advantage for GCP gaining a really good security solution.
Great stuff. Well, I appreciate the insights and new perspectives on this multi-cloud AI-driven world. Gavin, thanks so much for joining us.
Great.
Dark Reading News Desk.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
We've been talking with Gavin Millard of Tenable. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.